Today on Sugar Spun Run, I'll be showing you how to make fudge cookies. Hey Sugar Spun bakers, Sam here, and today I am so excited to be sharing you another carefully tested, well-researched, and perfected recipe. This one is super chocolatey too, so if you are a chocolate lover, I know you're going to love this one. Let's go ahead and get started. Now these fudge cookies are super decadent and they have a rich chocolate surprise inside. Now we're going to make that fudge filling first by preparing a really simple ganache. To make this, you're going to want to pour 1 cup of semi-sweet chocolate chips in a small or medium-sized heat-proof bowl. Next, we'll head over to the stovetop where you're going to need a small saucepan and we'll add 1/2 cup of heavy cream. Now we're just going to heat our cream over medium heat just until it begins to simmer. Once it's simmering, we'll take it off the heat and just pour it evenly over our chocolate chips. All right, now we'll cover this bowl with a piece of foil and let it sit for just 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, you'll remove the foil and you'll just want to use a whisk to whisk everything together. And I always just do this nice and slowly. At first, the mixture is probably going to look like it wants to separate, but it should come together and you should have a nice, smooth chocolate ganache. All right, now this needs to harden and solidify a little bit before we can do anything with it. So let's go ahead and pop this in our fridge and then we can start preparing our cookie dough. Now for your cookie dough, you're going to need a large mixing bowl and we're going to start with 1 cup of softened, unsalted butter. We'll add 1 1/4 cups of firmly packed light brown sugar and 1/2 cup of granulated sugar. And you could make today's recipe in the stand mixer, but today I'm going to be using my electric mixer. And we'll just beat everything together until it's creamy and well combined. This mixture doesn't really get super creamy, but you want everything to be nicely incorporated. You don't want to have any sugar hiding at the bottom or any discernible pieces of butter. It should be nicely combined. Next, we're going to be adding 1 large egg and 1 large egg yolk. So the easiest way to get this egg yolk is just crack that egg and just pass the yolk back and forth between each half until the white falls out. We can just add this yolk into our cookie dough. I love using this extra yolk just because it helps make the cookie nice and tender and just enriches the dough. We'll also add 1 1/2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. We'll stir everything together until it's smooth and nicely combined. All right, now in a separate mixing bowl, we are going to combine 2 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour, 1/2 cup of cocoa powder, and I like to use natural cocoa powder, 1 tablespoon of cornstarch, which I love to add because it helps make the cookie dough firm and stable and helps it keep that fudge filling inside rather than letting it ooze out while it bakes, but it also doesn't make the cookie too dry like adding extra flour would do. We'll also add a teaspoon of baking powder, 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, and 3/4 teaspoon of table salt. Now we'll whisk everything together until it's nicely combined. And then we're just going to gradually add the dry ingredients to our wet ingredients. Now, this dough does become pretty dry, so you do want to add everything gradually. If you add all of your flour mixture at once, the dough is just going to become too crumbly and it's going to be very difficult for you to work with. I like to add it in about 3 or 4 parts, making sure all of the flour has been completely absorbed before I add any more. All right, now I do want to take a look and make sure I've gotten all of the flour nicely absorbed. There's no pockets hiding in the bottom. Here's a little bit I can work in right now. And once that's looking good, we're going to add some chocolate chips. We'll be adding 1 1/2 cups of chocolate chips because there's no such thing as too much chocolate. Now I'm actually not going to add all of the chocolate chips. I'm going to reserve just a small bit of them. This is probably just a couple tablespoons because I like to add them on top just because it makes the cookies look really nice and kind of sets them over the edge for appearance. So we'll just set those aside for now. Now stir in the chocolate chips, and I always do this by hand using a spatula. And we're going to let this dough chill for just a little bit. Now, I don't like to let it sit in the refrigerator too long because it can become difficult to work with, but I'm going to cover it and I'm going to put it in the fridge while I work with the ganache. So my ganache has been in the fridge for about 15-20 minutes at this point. If yours is still really loose, you'll want to let it sit a little bit longer, but at this point it's firm enough that I can start scooping it. Now we're going to need 2 teaspoon-sized dollops, which are going to be going inside of our fudge cookies, so I'm just going to be using my cookie scoop. I will try to remember to link to this in the description in case you're interested in this one. And I'm just going to scoop by level 2 teaspoon-sized scoops and drop it on a wax paper-lined baking sheet. If your ganache is just running all over the place when you're trying to drop it, it's going to need more time in the fridge, so just pop it back in the fridge for another 10-15 minutes or so. Now, once I've made all of my fudge or ganache dollops, I'm just going to take this and I'm going to drop it in the freezer where it's going to chill for 15 minutes. All right, so while everything is chilling, I like to get the oven preheated to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Once the oven is preheated and your ganache is firmed up in the freezer, we'll go ahead and we'll grab our cookie dough out of the fridge and we'll grab our ganache dollops and we can start assembling our cookies. Now to do this, I like to take 1.5 tablespoons of cookie dough, and it is still kind of sticky, but that's fine. If it's too sticky to manage, you can put it back in the fridge for a little bit, but it should be workable. And I'm gonna take that dough and I'm just gonna use my thumb to make an indent in the center. And then I'll take one of my fudge dollops and I'm just gonna press that into that indent I made, and I'm just gonna work the dough around that. And then I'm just gonna roll it between my palms to make it nice and pretty smooth. Now we'll place these cookie dough balls on a parchment paper lined baking sheet, spacing them at least 2 inches apart because they are going to spread some. And I said 1.5 tablespoons, but it's really a heaping 1.5 tablespoon. This is a 1.5 tablespoon size cookie scoop. So I'm just making that a heaping size. And we'll take this over to our preheated oven where they're going to need to bake for about 12 to 13 minutes. All right, now if you reserved your chocolate chips, once your cookies have finished baking, we're going to go ahead and grab those. And while the cookies are still warm, we're just going to gently nestle the chocolate chips on top. This is not necessary. You could put all your chips right inside the dough, but don't they just look a lot nicer this way? Now the cookies are going to be super fragile while they're still warm, and in fact they could even be a little bit dangerous because that fudge filling is kind of molten, so you want to let these cool before you dig in. Once they're completely cooled, we can go ahead and grab one, and I want to break into one of these so you can just see how nice they look inside. You see that fudge filling? And that is how you make these super decadent fudge-filled cookies. I really hope you guys enjoyed today's recipe, and if you tried this one out, please leave me a comment and let me know what you think. And if you're following me on Instagram, definitely tag me on these if you make them. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. You've got to try these.